and you are off to the races.
It's 5:05 and welcome into a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. Tracking some news out of Washington, D.C. that relates to North Carolina. Last Friday, a 25-year-old man from Durham by the name of Michael Snow Jr. was sentenced in U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia for burning an American flag. He was charged with destruction of government property during a protest in Washington, D.C. following the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump last year. Court documents read as follows. They say, the government requests that the court sentence the defendant to 1 year of probation with a condition that he stay away from federal museums and monuments and pay restitution in the amount of $525. U.S. Attorney Ed Martin Jr., acting special agent in charge Cortland Ray of the FBI's Washington Field Office Division, and Chief Jessica Taylor of the U.S. Park Police announced the sentencing, according to a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office. On February 11th of this year, Snow pled guilty to destruction of government property of less than $1,000. Snow destroyed an American flag, which I noted was property of the federal government, back on July 24th when he set it on fire in front of Union Station in Washington, D.C. An organization was granted a permit to hold a demonstration in the area of Columbia Circle, located at the intersection of Massachusetts Avenue and East Street, directly in front of Union Station back on July 24th of last year, according to some of those court documents. Between approximately 3 and 5 p.m., demonstrators gathered at the site. During the event, individuals removed flags from flagpoles, which are property of the federal government, and set fire to flags and other items, defaced multiple statues and structures with graffiti, and obstructed law enforcement officers attempting to arrest those involved in some of those vandalism efforts. Several other groups applied for and were granted permits to demonstrate on the National Mall that day. The flags, statues, and structures in Columbia Circle are all that of property of the U.S. government. The total cost of cleanup and repair was estimated to be over $11,000 by the National Park Service. 2 individuals were captured on open source and surveillance video lowering an American flag affixed to an eastern flagpole in Columbus Circle. After the flag fell to the ground, a man who would later be identified as 25-year-old Snow grabbed it and carried it to the crowd of protesters. He threw the flag on the ground, produced a lighter, and attempted to set the flag on fire. Unsuccessfully, he yelled to his fellow crowd protesters, "I need a better lighter." The crowd surrounded the man and chanted, "Burn, burn, burn," according to the press release. Someone handed Snow a bottle of charcoal lighter fluid. Snow doused the flag with the fluid and then, with an unidentified individual from the crowd, used a lighter to torch it. Snow was charged on December the 6th of this year with 1 count of destruction of government property and pled guilty to those charges back in mid-February and has officially been sentenced to that. He will be serving 1 year probation with the condition that he stays away from federal museums and monuments and pay restitution for the destroyed American flag in the amount of $525. We've got some pictures, videos, and additional details on this story this morning. It's over on our website, carolinajournal.com. The headline, Durham man sentenced for burning American flag. You can read those details there, where it's now 5:09 and News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We have been talking a lot about tariffs and trade deals and some of the impacts on North Carolina. Earlier this week, the big international news is that the United States has reached at least a 90-day temporary pause with one of our largest trading partners in China. To get some additional details on that this morning as it relates to North Carolina, Katie Zender, CarolinaJournal.com, who has been walking us through this over the last couple of months. Katie, thanks for the time this morning. Major announcement earlier this week as it relates to trade with China. What's been the reaction here in North Carolina?
Hi, good morning, Nick. So earlier this week, actually over the weekend, 2 major trade deals have been announced, one with the United Kingdom and one with China, and both of those were announced over the weekend. So yeah, we were able to speak to a few different, people in leadership, people in agriculture, policy analysts here in North Carolina, and get some of their reactions to this trade deal.
One of the individuals you spoke to is related to the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. So what did they have to say as it relates to some of these fluid conditions that continue to exist?
Right. So Jake Cashin, he's the Vice President of Government Affairs for the North Carolina Chamber, said the recent trade agreements with the UK and China are a positive step toward greater certainty for North Carolina businesses. He said predictable and transparent trade policy gives jobs creators the confidence they need to invest, grow, and hire. And then he went on to say that, with the trade deal putting its focus on advancing pro-growth policies that strengthen North Carolina in a competitive position, the Chamber is prioritizing, quote, swift congressional extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
And obviously those Tax Cuts and Job Acts are a big discussion that continues to unfold in Washington, D.C. Well, of course, we'll keep our ear to the ground on all of that. Katie, in our past conversations that we've had as it relates to tariff and trade deals, you've really been focusing on what is the largest business in North Carolina, agriculture, which I guess maybe is not on the top of most people's mind. It is a major business across the state. Have agricultural leaders had an ability to respond to some of these recent deals?
Yes, they have. So that's absolutely right, Nick. A lot of people don't realize this, but agriculture is the number one industry in North Carolina, grossing $111.1 billion annually. Some of our major commodities include sweet potatoes, pork, soybeans, tobacco. Those are some of the biggest commodities here in North Carolina. And so Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture here in North Carolina, Steve Troxler, said, we ship a lot of products to the UK, particularly sweet potatoes and tobacco. A favorable agreement with the UK is very beneficial to North Carolina agriculture and our farmers here. And so like I said, one of the biggest commodities that we have here in North Carolina is sweet potatoes and then tobacco. North Carolina is actually the number one state for both of those commodities as an exporter in the U.S. So we are the leading state in the U.S. that exports both sweet potatoes and tobacco. And one of the biggest producers of sweet potatoes and tobacco is Scott Farms, which is just outside of Raleigh, about an hour, based in Lacuma. And they have over 4,500 acres of sweet potatoes and 4,000 acres of tobacco. And so they're one of the biggest producers of sweet potatoes here in North Carolina. Not only that, but they ship so much internationally that they actually have marketing and sales offices in the UK.
Wow. When you've got an international setup like that, obviously you're doing a lot of business. And Katie, all across the board, even for some of these larger farms, and we've talked about the difference between the large conglomerate farms and some of the small family farms, agriculture at the end of the day does tend to be a relatively low profit entity. You have to volume up and have a huge mass of product to make a lot of money on something like that. You looking at various field conditions, weather conditions. It's a very interesting industry that we watch, and regardless of some of these trade discussions, it can be a very uncertain industry.
That's exactly right, Nick. These farmers have to deal with a lot of uncertainty, weather, price hikes, production costs, all kinds of things. So when they're, accounting for all these things already, and then you throw the tariffs at them, that's really a lot that they're having to juggle. And I've been able to speak with a number of different farmers in different industries over the past couple of weeks, and they're really hurting. They're really keeping their eye on, what's going to be coming down the pipeline here. A lot of them aren't feeling the full impacts of it yet, and hopefully they won't with this new trade deal. Hopefully this trade deal will give us some time to negotiate a more permanent deal. But I spoke with a tobacco farmer a few weeks ago, and he said, the markets don't open until late summer, so hopefully we'll have a deal by then. But there could potentially be some major, impacts for farmers across the board if we don't get a more permanent solution to this.
Obviously, it's something we're going to continue to watch. Katie, you've got details not only on some of these trade deals and the impacts on North Carolina, but some of these various sectors and industries that you mentioned this morning. Where can folks go and get some additional details?
Right. They can read the full article as well as some of the articles in the past couple of weeks at carolinajournal.com.
Katie Zender joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:14, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get a look at traffic this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks, Nick.
It's 521. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Good morning. Nick Craig with you here. Keeping our eye on some business news this morning. Last week, it was announced that a company by the name of GeneTech, a founding company in the biotech industry, plans to build a $700 million, 7,000 square foot manufacturing plant in Holly Springs. That is in southern Wake County and very much in the Research Triangle area of our state. The announcement was made at the company's D.C. headquarters by its CEO in Ashley Margie, following approval by the North Carolina Department of Commerce Economic Investment Committee. This will be GeneTech's first footprint in North Carolina. In a press release, Democrat Governor Josh Stein said world-class companies like GeneTech recognize that North Carolina is a leading state for biotechnology. These companies know that our life science workforce is ready to help them deliver their cutting-edge medicines to the world, and we are proud to welcome GeneTech to North Carolina. With headquarters in San Francisco, California, the company is a member of the Roche Group of Switzerland and is widely recognized as a pioneer in biotechnology, according to a press release. The company has been at the forefront of scientific innovations for over 4 decades, dedicated to discovering and developing treatments for serious and life-threatening conditions. The Holly Springs facility will serve as a high-volume fill-finish operation. The expansion will support its current portfolio and future pipeline, enhancing GeneTech's ability to meet the growing global demand for some of their medications. The CEO saying in a press release, GeneTech would like to thank Governor Stein and Commerce Secretary Lillian for their support and welcoming us to North Carolina. We are thrilled to establish this relationship with the city of Holly Springs, where we will create new manufacturing and construction jobs while making a broader positive impact on the local economy and community for many years to come. The new facility will be partially funded through a Job Development Investment Grant, that is a JDIG grant, and project is established to grow by more than $3 billion over a 12-year term. Under this JDIG agreement, the company may receive up to over $9 million in potential reimbursement over a 12-year period of time. That is contingent on them creating 420 jobs. The state payments are issued only after the Department of Commerce and Revenue confirms that the company has achieved its job creation and investment targets. Additional incentives comprise of $756,000 from the North Carolina Community College System, $827,000 from the Department of Commerce's Division of Workforce Solutions, $19 million from Wake County, and $13 million from the town of Holly Springs, according to a press release from the company. The press release from the governor also notes that the project is expected to yield a 230% return on public investment. The governor's statement also claims that JDIG incentives consistently generate a net positive tax return for the state's treasury, even after accounting for the reimbursement payments made to participating companies. Joseph Harris, who is a fiscal policy analyst for the John Locke Foundation, told the Carolina Journal, quote, while JDIG is often praised as a powerful engine for job creation, a closer look tells you a different story. According to a recent report from 2003 through 2024, 203 out of 426 agreements have been terminated or withdrawn before fulfilling their job creation targets. This high failure rate raises serious questions about the program's effectiveness and whether it delivers on its promises to taxpayers. Salaries will vary depending on the position, but the average salary will be more than $119,000 a year. That's more than $40,000 over the current salary in Wake County, which has an average salary in the mid to $70,000s. The new positions are expected to have an annual payroll impact of more than $50 million a year. According to Harris, he says in Governor Josh Stein's recent budget proposal, he recommended halting across-the-board income tax cuts for all companies. Meanwhile, he has promoted providing economic incentive deals to select corporations such as Gene Tech. This hypocritical stance towards corporate tax mirrors the position of former Governor Roy Cooper during his tenure. This is not the first pharmaceutical company to be funded by JDIG to come to Holly Springs. A company by the name of Amgen broke ground on an expansion back in January. We talked about some of those details at the time right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. You can read some more details on this, plus we've got some additional quotes from Joseph Harris with the John Locke Foundation about the JDIG program as well. Those details available this morning on our website, carolinajournal.com. Taking a look at some other statewide news this morning, an interesting report out this morning from RAND. It is a group that does polling and studies as it relates to education. Pre-K teachers experience nearly double the level of frequent job-related stress compared to other working results, according to this study from RAND and their American pre-K teacher survey results. The survey was taken out of more than 1,400 public school-based pre-K teachers in March and April of last year. The sample was limited to lead or co-lead teachers in general and special education. The report provides new information about well-being, pay, and working conditions for public school-based pre-K teachers that is relevant to the state legislature. School district leaders, early childhood program leaders, and public school principals who lead pre-K classrooms, according to one of the study authors, Elizabeth Steiner, Anna Shapiro, and Phoebe Levine. Managing student behavior, was the most frequent cited stressor, with 67% of pre-K teachers ranking it as their top 3 stress sources. Additional stressors included low pay, administrative workload outside of teaching, and supporting students' mental health. 18% of pre-K teachers expressed intentions to leave their job in 2024, slightly lower than K through 12 teachers and similar other working adults, but intentions to leave were higher among those with lower pay and fewer years of experience. Pre-K teachers reported working fewer weekly hours, on average 47, than K through 12 teachers, who estimated 53 hours a week, but 8 hours more than their 39 hours of contracted time. Teachers with more than 5 years of experience worked an average of 3 hours more per week than less experienced teachers. Pre-K teachers also reported an average base salary of $63,500 a year, which comes in about $7,000 less than K through 12 teachers and $24,000 less than similar working adults. The survey drops as North Carolina grapples with serious challenges in its child care and pre-K sector. Governor Josh Stein recently announced a task force for child care and early education in response to what many across the state are calling a crisis in access, affordability, and workforce shortages. Child care center operators like Mary Myers from Davidson County have drawn attention to the labor shortage in early child education. She noted, "We don't have any teachers." That was a quote from her back from 2022, citing a lack of qualified staff due to degree requirements, low pay, and the high pressure and stress environment. North Carolina families are also bearing the brunt of these issues, with tuition costs increasing and countless child care programs teetering on closure due to funding gaps. Recent surveys have also revealed a lack of child care and forcing many parents out of the workforce altogether, creating some rippling effects across many various industries. A very interesting story this morning. We do have some charts and graphs that dive into some additional details on this survey on our website this morning, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:30, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get another look at the roadways on your Thursday morning. A look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you.
It's 5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Turning our attention to the General Assembly this morning. Legislators on the House Military and Veterans Affairs Committee were briefed on the benefit of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, known as HBOT, for treating PTSD and other traumatic brain injuries during a meeting at the General Assembly earlier this week. The committee learned about how the nonprofit group HBOT for Heroes is helping veterans recover from mental illness after returning from deployment with oxygen therapy. David Buzzard, who works for HBOT for Heroes, told the committee, quote, "I have 2 Purple Hearts. I was wounded twice in Afghanistan. I was a combat infantryman. I took some shrapnel to the side of the face here, and subsequently I have issues. PTSD, TBI, anger issues, sleep problems, and mobility problems." Facing severe issues, Buzzard decided to try HBOT, which involves several sessions of sitting in a chamber and breathing in pure oxygen that is 2 times the Earth's atmospheric pressure. The therapy supports everything from mobility to cognitive function, promoting new natural pathways by reducing brain inflammation and swelling, which can be a major cause in impulsive decision-making and contribute to recidivism in veterans. Buzzard telling the committee, "I did 3 sessions of HBOT. My sleep went from 3.5 to 4 hours of terrible sleep a night. I mean, rocking and rolling and never actually getting to that deep sleep, to about 7 hours of deep sleep every night. I started identifying my joints weren't hurting quite as much when I went to pick up my daughter and we play. And then I started noticing that my anger issues were actually again alleviated. I wasn't so pointed with my wife." Because it did such amazing things for his body, Buzzard joined HBOT for Heroes to help more North Carolinians have access to what he calls transformational therapy. Buzzard watched 9 friends who he was deployed with commit suicide over the past years, all of whom who had been on psychoactive drugs. He said that he wants HBOT to be an option for as many veterans as possible. Proponents pointed to the large veteran population in North Carolina as a reason to continue stepping up with state aid for veterans. There's about 136,000 North Carolina veterans. They are suffering from issues like TBI and PTSD. Executive Director Edward D. Gerlermo pointed out that 100 veterans in North Carolina will take their lives this year because they have had traumatic brain injuries and in defense of our country. The General Assembly appropriated about $1 million in the 2023 budget for treatment, and the organization is hoping to secure more funds to increase care as the General Assembly continues to negotiate a budget deal over the next month or so. According to the executive director of HBOTs for Heroes, he says, "So the state of North Carolina, one of the few states in the nation, has stood up and has paid for treatment. We at this point have treated nearly 300 veterans. We have 900 that are currently on the waiting list. There is a strong demand for this state and to continue stepping up. 10 years ago, I was introduced to this amazing therapy. It is a cure. It is not a coping mechanism." Funding is not currently appropriated for the program in the Senate version of the budget proposal, but the House budget is expected to be released in the coming weeks and could provide additional funds and some funding there. In North Carolina, a public-private partnership is set up to open a new facility near the Marine Corps Museum, expanding capabilities beyond the current RTP site to treat more veterans, surpassing the state funding sought for the next 2 years. Insurance does not cover this hyperbaric oxygen therapy because the FDA hasn't approved it for 100 years. Without FDA approval, CMS and the VA won't accept it either. At a September roundtable with the Veteran Affairs Committee that took place with U.S. Representative Greg Murphy, psychiatric officials admitted after an hour of questioning that they follow FDA protocols very strictly. It took an hour of interrogation for them to finally admit that they don't do anything without FDA approval. And so the FDA has blocked it at the VA level, according to the executive director. The psychotherapist chiefs wouldn't even admit that a traumatic brain injury causes inflammation. So it's not in their book. It's not in their protocol. They just don't do it. We've got some additional interesting information about this therapy, this hyperbaric oxygen therapy known as HBOT, on our website this morning. You can head on over there, carolinajournal.com, and get some additional details, where it's now 542, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Questions about contaminated water, also known as PFAS, has gained a lot of national attention over the last decade or so. In the state of North Carolina, many areas have been ground zero for this PFAS contamination. There is some legislation working its way through the North Carolina General Assembly that we are tracking this morning. To get some details on that, Brianna Kramer, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Brianna, if you rolled the clock back 20 years, most folks would not even have any idea what the term PFAS meant. And over the last 15, 20 years, it has ballooned across the United States. What's going on in Raleigh as it relates to that this morning?
Yeah. Hey, Nick. Over recent months, lawmakers in North Carolina's House and Senate have been grappling with how to respond to contamination in the state's rivers by PFAS, which are known as forever chemicals, these harsh chemicals that are used in manufacturing of goods such as like pots and pans, for instance, and waterproof clothing. It's in a lot of the things all around us that we're exposed to, but the concern is in our water sources. And so we have lawmakers trying to discuss how to take action and make sure our water is clean, and to address some contaminated areas in North Carolina. And so both chambers have been pushing through legislation in recent months. And most recently, the Senate's budget offers some help in addressing this concern. They offer up some funding to do additional research in the years ahead.
You know, one of the kind of underreported stories of these forever chemicals, PFAS, is that local water systems throughout the state of North Carolina, ratepayer-funded systems, Brianna, have been on the hook to fund, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure projects, whether that be granular activated carbon filtration or reverse osmosis systems throughout the state. Taxpayers and ratepayers have had to pay for all of this, while many of the polluters continue to operate in that manner. This has been a tough issue for lawmakers across the state to navigate.
Yeah, definitely. That's something interesting that legislators actually have been discussing, is the fact that different counties have had to front the bill, and then this really goes to the ratepayers. So, for example, the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority spent $83 million in ratepayer funds to address PFAS contamination in their water supply. And then in Brunswick County, they spent $159 million to expand and install a low-pressure reverse osmosis water treatment system. So this is in a House bill actually addressing this issue of the cost and who that should fall on, if that should fall on the polluter that is possibly contaminating water sources. So that's on the House side, one of the bills that they were discussing recently.
The two examples that you bring up in southeastern North Carolina all stem from the Chemours, previously DuPont Fayetteville work site, which is in Bladen County, that it came to light about a decade or so ago that that company had been polluting the Cape Fear River Basin for the better part of almost 40 years. While there is legal battles and litigation going on, Brianna, that could take years, decades potentially to play out in the court system. And in the meantime, these public utility authorities, they have to act very quickly because they're responsible for delivering clean drinking water to their customers.
Yeah, and this is a growing conversation with lawmakers, elected officials at the local level, all the way up to the state level, and then, of course, the federal level with the EPA and different organizations trying to address the health concerns. I mean, PFAS have been linked to cancer and developmental issues and just serious health risks that they're wanting to do more research on because they're called forever chemicals because they're impossible to break down. Which is something that research is helping to find out different ways that we can clean our water supply and go to some alternatives. So this is something that's ongoing. And then, as you mentioned, Chemours, they've had some issues in southeastern North Carolina. They did have a representative at the General Assembly who said that the company voluntarily ceased all of their emissions into the Cape Fear River when concerns became apparent in 2017. And so they respectfully suggested that some of these laws not be enacted.
Brandon, you spent a lot of time down at the legislature, and it seems like we've got kind of two dueling things going on here. You mentioned that Senate Republicans are working this out through the budget process. Meanwhile, House Republicans are introducing legislation. Is it safe to assume that as the budget negotiations continue and go on, we'll likely see something more cohesive between both chambers over the next couple of weeks?
I think that we really will see something because we're seeing both sides take action. And it's also a bipartisan issue when you think about, the health concerns and the funding. Both Republicans and Democrats are supportive of this. On the Senate side, in their budget, they would like to commit $110 million over the next 2 years to create the PFAS mitigation fund. To do research, further testing, and to help protect communities. So that's a significant amount of funding from the Senate side. And then on the House side, there are several bills that have been moving forward in committees in the past couple months here. House Bill 569, for example, it's called PFAS pollution and polluter liability. And that would address contamination in water sources that go into a public utility, like we discussed. And also notably, when we're talking about solutions and potential options for legislators to take to navigate this issue, there is new technology. There's a Burlington-based company that is doing research and creating new technology to eliminate PFAS, most of them from water supplies. So they've heard from companies and different experts in this field on the problem, but also the solution moving forward.
Brandon, there's a lot that goes into this, a lot of past coverage, obviously future coverage as we continue to track these details. Where can folks get the latest on that this morning?
Yeah, you can read the latest story at carolinajournal.com.
A great update this morning. Brianna Kramer from carolinajournal.com joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:49, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Another look at the roadways this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
And we're looking pretty...
554, welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We're tracking an interesting piece of legislation this morning out of Raleigh for those that enjoy recreationally fishing. House Bill 442 passed the House last week in a 77-35 vote. It's sponsored by Representatives Frank Eiler, Edward Goodwin, and Ted Davis Jr. The legislation would create a pilot program that would expand the recreational fishing of red snapper and flounder in North Carolina over a 4-year period. And I found this to be pretty shocking. Currently, the recreational fishing season for flounder is limited to just 4 days and only 1 day for red snapper, just 1 day throughout the entire year under the Division of Marine Fisheries Department of Environmental Quality. The bill reads, the recreational fishing industry contributes significantly to the economy of coastal North Carolina. The bill proposes a recreational fishing season of flounder for not less than a 6-week period of time between May 15th and November the 15th annually, with a limit of 1 fish per person per day. Similarly, a year-round red snapper season with a limit of 2 fish per person per day and a 20-inch size limit in state waters. So for those that enjoy recreational fishing, there's been a lot of controversy specifically over flounder and red snapper. There could be some progress on that. That legislation did pass last week and is now in the North Carolina Senate. An update on another piece of legislation that we have been tracking, House Bill 821. We talked about this last week. It passed the House Rules Committee on Tuesday, and that is a piece of legislation that would allow drivers to drive with an expired driver's license in North Carolina for 2 years due to big-time backlogs and slowdowns at the DMV. The proposal would give every license holder a 2-year grace period after their license expiration date to renew it. Sponsor Representative Jay Adams said in response to the ongoing problems that this is just a short temporary solution, or it in fact is not a solution itself, but a temporary stopgap measure. He told the committee this simply gives the citizens of North Carolina some relief from the fact that they can't renew their license, and it also relieves the burden on DMV so that they can sort out their issues as well. We've had plenty of coverage of slowdowns at the Department of Motor Vehicle over the last couple of years. DMV continuing to deal with some major issues. An ongoing audit there from State Auditor Dave Bolick, expecting details on that in the coming weeks as well. That's going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.